Final boarding will close in 18 minutes for Flight 482, the loudspeaker announced, cheerful and final.
I'm on the manifest, Danielle said, holding her boarding pass steady. The agent tried again. Red. She leaned closer to the screen, lowered her voice. The captain has concerns about whether you're the correct passenger for this seat. A man behind Danielle shifted, sighed. Another traveler stopped watching. The agent's hand hovered over the keyboard, then withdrew as if touching it might say too much. The jet bridge inched inward. The red light stayed red. 18 minutes. Have you ever followed every rule, only to be told you don't belong there? Where are you listening from right now? What country? What city? What moment in your day? If stories about justice, dignity, and quiet courage matter to you, consider subscribing so you don't miss the next one. Because what happens next isn't about a flight. It's about how power tests patience, and what it costs to stand still when the door starts to close. The gate agent didn't meet Danielle's eyes this time. She angled the monitor away, as if the screen itself might betray her. This seat is usually reserved for our premium travelers, she said, smoothing the words into something polite enough to pass. There may have been a system error. Danielle didn't move her boarding pass. The card felt lighter now, like it had already lost weight. She glanced past the agent, toward the jet bridge. The metal tunnel hummed with conditioned air, its rubber seams breathing in and out. A strip of yellow tape along the wall curled at the edge. Old, replaced once, then forgotten. Which system? Danielle asked. The question wasn't confrontational. It was precise. The agent blinked. I'm sorry? Which system flagged it? Danielle repeated, her voice even. Passenger verification or seat assignment? A man 2 steps behind Danielle shifted his backpack from one shoulder to the other. Someone else coughed. The space around the podium grew tighter, as if the queue had decided to hold its breath together. The agent's fingers hovered over the keyboard. It's both, she said finally. Sometimes it happens. Sometimes the word floated between them, doing the work of a reason without being one. Danielle nodded once. She took in the small details the way she always did when a room changed temperature, the scuffed corner of the podium, the laminated safety placard bolted to the wall near the jet bridge entrance. The placard listed steps in block letters. The date at the bottom was older than it should have been. She noticed the typeface, the way the laminate had bubbled near the screw. Behind her, someone murmured, "What's going on?" "It's probably a mistake," another voice said, louder, kinder than it needed to be. The loudspeaker crackled again. Final boarding will close in 15 minutes. 15, the number pressed against Danielle's ribs. Not fear pressure, the kind that demanded a decision without offering information. She reached into her bag and took out a thin notebook, the cover worn soft from travel. It opened easily to a page already creased. Across the top, in her own handwriting, a line read, "Audit human factors." She didn't look down for long. She didn't need to. The words were muscle memory. "Before the door closes," Danielle said, "can you confirm which checklist the captain is referencing?" The agent's mouth parted, then closed.
"Ma'am, I don't."
"I'm not asking you to interpret it," Danielle added gently. "Just which one?" A pause. Not the dramatic kind. The practical kind that happened when someone weighed the cost of asking a question up the chain. The agent glanced toward the jet bridge, then back at the screen. "I'll check," she said, already reaching for the phone. "But if the door closes—" "I know," Danielle said. "Time doesn't change protocol. Danielle, they have with prevaricating now, trialed in this body, to matter, and report." The agent stiffened at that. The phrase sounded rehearsed, but it wasn't. It was simply true. A few feet away, Jason Liu raised his phone slightly, angling it so the lens caught the podium, the red glow of the scanner, the half-open mouth of the jet bridge. He didn't hit live. Not yet. He watched the clock on the screen tick down to 14 minutes and pressed record without a sound. The agent spoke into the phone in a voice that tried to be invisible. "Hi, Captain Hale. I have a passenger at the gate with a verification issue." Danielle heard the word issue and felt its elasticity, how it could stretch to fit anything. "Yes," the agent continued. "She's asking which checklist." She listened, nodded, listened again. Her shoulders rose and fell once. When she hung up, she didn't smile. "The captain is concerned about safety," she said. "The sentence had weight because it carried authority without explanation. Until he's satisfied, I can't clear the pass." Danielle's gaze returned to the placard. She traced the line where the laminate had bubbled, the place where a corner peeled back. Human factors, fatigue, assumptions, the quiet places where errors like to live. "I understand safety," Danielle said. "That's why I'm asking." The agent shifted her stance, blocking the scanner without meaning to. The red light pulsed, patient and unarguable. Behind Danielle, a woman whispered, "Is this really happening?" Jason's phone caught the whisper. The red light, the yellowed placard. He zoomed slightly, then stopped. Not yet. The jet bridge hissed and drew in another inch. The gap narrowed. 14 minutes. Danielle folded the notebook, closed, and slid it back into her bag. She held her boarding pass the way someone holds a fragile thing, not tight enough to crease it, not loose enough to drop it. And who knows when the door will close? The loudspeaker didn't raise its voice. It didn't have to. "Final boarding will close in 12 minutes. Emily leaned closer to Danielle, close enough that the edge of the podium pressed into Danielle's hip. Her voice dropped into the space reserved for confessions and ultimatums. "We're at 12 minutes. If the door closes," she said, not finishing the sentence. She didn't need to. The jet bridge made the rest of it obvious, inching forward like a jaw. Danielle nodded once, not because she agreed, because she understood the shape of the threat. A man a few steps back cleared his throat. Someone checked a watch. The queue had thinned, then stalled. A small knot of people tethered to the delay. The air smelled faintly of coffee and disinfectant. Overhead, a light flickered and steadied itself. "Can you note the time on the record?" Danielle asked. Emily paused. "The record?" "Yes," Danielle said. When the concern was raised, Emily's eyes flicked to the camera domes in the ceiling, then back to the screen. "It's noted," she said, though her fingers didn't move. Danielle didn't argue. She turned slightly, just enough to give the people behind her a clearer view of the podium. Not as a performance, more like an instinct to remove shadows. Jason shifted his stance and angled his phone again. The red glow of the scanner filled the frame, patient and accusatory. He hit record and watched the timer tick. 12 minutes became 11. Emily's phone buzzed. She answered with a clipped, "Yes," listening, nodding, her shoulders tightening. When she hung up, she didn't look relieved. "The captain wants the door ready," she said. "He's reviewing." Reviewing what? Danielle didn't ask. She knew the elasticity of the word, how it could stretch to cover delay without committing to outcome. "Okay," Danielle said. She stepped half a pace back, creating space. It was a small thing, but it changed the geometry of the moment. People could see the scanner now, the way it refused her card again when Emily tried, the red light unwavering. A woman in a gray coat leaned toward Jason. "Is she doing something wrong?" Jason shook his head, without looking away from his screen. "I don't think so." The loudspeaker crackled, then fell silent. The absence was worse. The clock on the gate display clicked down another minute. Danielle's gaze drifted to the safety placard again. She noticed something new. The font size difference between steps 3 and 4. The kind of inconsistency that happened when policies were patched instead of rewritten. She imagined the chain of hands that had touched it. the assumptions layered over time. "Emily," Danielle said, using the agent's name for the first time. It wasn't a tactic. It was courtesy. If the concern is seat assignment, the verification comes first. If it's verification, the checklist requires a supervisor confirmation before denial. Emily swallowed. "I know," she said quickly, then stopped herself. I think. Danielle waited. Silence did the work. "I can call my supervisor," Emily offered, the words carrying both hope and fear. "Yes," Danielle said. "Please." Emily dialed. Her heel tapping once, twice. The jet bridge hissed again, a mechanical sigh. The gap narrowed to a shoulder's width. Behind Danielle, a voice rose, not angry, just confused. "Are we really not boarding?" Emily covered the phone. "We're resolving it," she said, louder now, to everyone. The word resolving landed poorly, a promise without a timeline. The supervisor's voice crackled through the phone, tinny and distant. Emily turned her body, shielding the screen as if it might leak. She spoke in fragments. "Yes. Verification. Captain's discretion. Time. Yes." Danielle caught the phrase "captain's discretion" and felt it settle like a weight. Discretion was a clean word. It sounded professional. It left no fingerprints. "Understood," Emily said, and hung up. She exhaled, then met Danielle's eyes. "He's on his way," she said. "But if the door closes—" "I know," Danielle said again. The repetition wasn't submission. It was acknowledgement of the clock as a participant. Jason's phone buzzed with notifications. Someone had noticed the recording and leaned in. "Are you live?" "Not yet," Jason said. He glanced at Danielle, at the way she stood with her shoulders relaxed, her boarding pass held flat. He watched the red light pulse and decided to wait. The loudspeaker chimed, almost apologetic. "Final boarding will close in 10 minutes. 10, a number small enough to be intimate. Danielle felt the room tilt, not with panic, but with clarity. She reached into her bag and took out the notebook again, opening it just long enough to confirm the page. The words steadied her. She slid it away. "When the captain arrives," she said to Emily, "please let him know. I'm asking about sequence, not exceptions." Emily nodded too quickly. "Okay." The jet bridge drew closer. The metal edge kissed the frame. 10 minutes. Danielle stood where she was, visible, composed, the red light still refusing her pass. And it seemed like something was waiting for her. Captain Hale arrived without urgency. He didn't stride. He didn't hurry. He appeared at the edge of the jet bridge like a decision that had already been made. Cap tucked under one arm. Jacket crisp enough to announce authority without speaking. The small knot of people at the gate shifted to make room for him, the way bodies do when they recognize a uniform. Emily straightened. "Captain," she said. Relief and apology braided into one word. Hale's eyes moved past her to Danielle, then to the scanner, then back to Danielle again. The sequence mattered. He took in the scene as if it were a checklist. The red light, the half-closed jet bridge, the clock above the podium ticking down with polite insistence. "Ma'am," he said, voice level. "There's a concern." Danielle nodded. "I understand." The word concern hung there, unspecific and heavy. Hale waited for something, an explanation, a protest, a softening. When it didn't come, he continued. "For safety reasons," he said. "We need to verify before boarding." Danielle held his gaze. "Verification comes first," she said. "Yes." Hale's brow creased, just slightly. "That's what I said." "No," Danielle replied. "Careful. You said before boarding. I'm asking about sequence. A few phones lifted higher. Jason felt the shift and tapped the screen. The red dot appeared. Live. The comments began to roll in, quiet at first, then faster questions, guesses, the familiar rush of strangers deciding where to stand. Hale noticed the phones. His jaw tightened. "Ma'am," he said, the title firming into a warning. "Please lower your voice." Danielle hadn't raised it. The room knew that. The correction landed anyway, a recalibration that recast her clarity as disturbance. "I'm asking a procedural question," she said, "not making a scene." Hale's eyes flicked to the jet bridge, which hissed and drew inward another inch. "We're close to closure," he said. "I don't want delays." Emily stepped in, palms out. "We're at 9 minutes," she offered, as if time itself were an opinion. 9 minutes. The number was intimate now, almost private. Danielle felt the urge to explain to list credentials, to compress a career into a sentence that would end this. She didn't. She knew the cost of that move. Authority that required self-disclosure under pressure wasn't authority at all. "Captain," she said, "the checklist you're invoking requires supervisor confirmation prior to denial." Hale's expression cooled. "Under my discretion," he said. "I can deny boarding if I believe there's a safety risk." There it was. Discretion. The clean word again. The shield. Jason's livestream count climbed 5,000. Then more. A comment floated up and stuck. "Why is she being talked down to?" Another followed. "This doesn't look like safety." Hale saw the screen glow, reflected in the glass of the podium. "This isn't the place," he said, voice lower now. "You're becoming disruptive." The word landed like a gavel. Disruptive meant tone. Disruptive meant presence. Disruptive meant that the system had decided how to read her. Danielle took a breath. She let it be visible. Not for him, for herself. "I'm not," she said. "I'm asking for the step that comes before denial." A beat of silence stretched. It wasn't hostile. It was evaluative. Hale measured the room, the clock, the phones. He glanced at Emily, who looked back with something like worry. "Emily," he said, "hold the door." The jet bridge froze. The hiss cut off, mid-breath. A ripple moved through the onlookers' relief, curiosity, impatience. The comments spiked. Jason steadied his phone, framing Hale and Danielle together now, equal in the shot. Hale turned back to Danielle. "I'll review," he said. "But if we close—" "I know," Danielle said. The phrase had become a shared language, stripped of its threat. She reached into her bag and took out her phone. Not to show him anything. Not yet. She scrolled once, then locked the screen. The motion was small, deliberate. "Captain," she added, "if the concern is verification, the protocol doesn't change because the clock is loud." A murmur moved through the group. Someone laughed softly, not unkindly. Hale's mouth tightened. He looked past Danielle, at the faces, at the phones, at the clock. "Lower your voice," he repeated, reflexive now. Danielle didn't respond right away. She looked at the safety placard again, the bubbled laminate, the outdated date. She imagined the memo that had authorized discretion, the meetings where it had sounded reasonable. Then she met Hale's eyes. "I am," she said. The loudspeaker chimed, hesitant. "Final boarding will close in 8 minutes." 8. The number pressed in, but the room had changed. The silence after the announcement held, thicker than before. Hale exhaled. "We'll resolve this," he said, to everyone and no one. "Stand by." He stepped aside, pulling out his phone. Emily hovered, uncertain. The jet bridge stayed still. Jason's live stream climbed again. Comments stacked. The scene had crossed a threshold not into chaos, but into visibility. Danielle stood where she was, Shoulders relaxed, boarding pass still unaccepted. The red light pulsed. Patient. 8 minutes. Captain Hale stepped a pace away from the podium, phone pressed to his ear, shoulders squared as if posture alone could keep the clock at bay. Emily hovered near the scanner, hands folded, eyes flicking between the red light and the faces now openly watching. Danielle stayed where she was. The jet bridge remained frozen, neither closing nor welcoming. The hiss had stopped, leaving a vacuum that amplified every small sound, the scrape of a shoe, the soft thud of a rolling bag set down. Jason's livestream counter climbed 10,000, then more. Comments stacked, a steady tide of why won't they just check? And, she's calm. What's the problem? Hale lowered his phone and returned. We're reviewing, he said, to no one in particular. His gaze settled on Danielle. For safety. Danielle nodded. She reached into her bag again and took out her phone. Not quickly, not defensively. The movement was measured, almost ritual. She unlocked the screen and turned it so the glass caught the overhead light. For a second, the reflection hid everything. Then she angled it just enough. A document header was visible. Not a logo, just words. Checklist, passenger verification sequence, and exceptions. Beneath it, a table of steps, boxes unfilled. She didn't hand it over. She didn't scroll. I'm not asking you to break protocol, she said. I'm asking you to follow it. Hale's eyes narrowed, focusing now not on her, but on the structure of the page. He leaned in despite himself, then stopped, catching the cameras in the corner of his vision. Ma'am, he said, the title stiff again, you can't cite internal documents here. It's not internal, Danielle replied. It's standard. Emily leaned forward, peering at the screen. That's the verification sequence, she said, then went still, realizing she'd spoken. A murmur moved through the onlookers. Jason's comments spiked. She knows the checklist. Why does she know the checklist? Hale straightened. Lower your voice, he said again, reflex now outrunning thought. Danielle hadn't raised it. She exhaled, slowly, and let the breath be seen. Captain, she said, you invoked discretion. Discretion comes after verification. The words landed with the dull weight of accuracy. Hale glanced at the clock. 7 minutes. The number blinked. Indifferent. He looked back at the phone in Danielle's hand, then at Emily, who was suddenly very interested in the edge of the podium. Emily, Hale said, what step are we on? Emily swallowed. Verification, she said. Technically, Hale echoed, irritation threading his voice. And what does the checklist require before denial? Emily hesitated. The room waited with her. Jason felt the pause ripple through the chat messages slowing, then clustering around a single word. Say it. A supervisor confirmation, Emily said. Hale closed his eyes for half a second. When he opened them, something had shifted. Not surrender, not yet, but friction. The kind that heated metal before it bent. Fine, he said. I'll confirm. He turned away again, phone raised. This time, he didn't step aside. He stayed within the frame, the cameras catching his profile as he spoke in clipped phrases. Yes. Verification. Discretion invoked. No. Not denial yet. Danielle lowered her phone and locked the screen. She slid it back into her bag, as if the document had already done its work. Behind her, a woman whispered, She's right. The words traveled, repeated softly, a current. Hale ended the call and faced Danielle. We'll verify, he said. The words sounded different now, less elastic, more precise. But if there's any issue, there won't be, Danielle said. It wasn't arrogance. It was confidence, grounded in sequence. Hale's jaw tightened. We'll see. The loudspeaker chimed again, apologetic. Final boarding will close in 6 minutes. 6. The pressure returned, but it had changed shape. It no longer pressed only on Danielle. It pressed outward, onto the system that had paused itself in public. Jason's livestream counter rolled past 20,000. A comment pinned itself to the top. Why is safety being used like this? Hale noticed it. He noticed all of it now, the eyes, the phones, the stillness of the jet bridge that refused to move without instruction. Authority without motion felt exposed. "Emily," he said, "start the verification." Emily nodded quickly, fingers flying at the keyboard. The scanner beeped, not green. Not yet, but the red light dimmed, as if considering. Danielle watched the process unfold, not intervening. She kept her hands visible, her posture open. When Emily hesitated, Danielle didn't prompt her. She let the steps speak. A beat passed. Then another. Emily looked up. "Name matches," she said. "Seat, assignment, matches." Hale exhaled through his nose. "Continue." Emily did. The room leaned in as one. The jet bridge stayed still. The red light pulsed. Slower now. 6 minutes. Danielle met Hale's eyes. Not triumph, not challenge, just expectation. The midpoint had shifted. The question was no longer, who is she? It was, what happens now that she's right? The captain's voice cut through the terminal before anyone saw him lift the handset. "Gate, this is the captain. We are 6 minutes from door closure. Please resolve immediately." The intercom flattened everything faces, intentions, the careful distinctions Danielle had drawn. 6 minutes was no longer a suggestion. It was an order dressed as time. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard. The verification screen glowed. Fields half filled, the cursor blinking like a dare. She glanced at Danielle, then at Captain Hale, who had stepped closer again, the uniform reclaiming the space it had briefly lost. "Proceed," Hale said. Not loud. Certain. Emily clicked. The scanner beeped a neutral tone. Not green, not red. The jet bridge stayed still, obedient to no one. Jason's live stream surged past 20,000. The comments changed texture, less guessing, more judgment. Why is the captain rushing? 6 minutes isn't safety. Someone pinned a clip of the intercom call. Authority. Replayed. Hale noticed the phones again. He set his jaw and turned to Danielle. "For clarity," he said, "I have full discretion under company safety protocol to deny boarding." The sentence was practiced. It had probably ended conversations before. Danielle nodded once. "Understood." The acknowledgement disarmed a few people. It didn't disarm the system. "Then I'm asking," she continued, "that discretion be exercised after verification is complete." Hale's eyes flicked to the screen. Emily swallowed and kept clicking. The cursor moved. A field filled. Another blinked. "Emily," Hale said, "how much time?" Emily checked the clock. 5 minutes, she said, then corrected herself. Just under. The loudspeaker chimed, almost apologetic. "Final boarding will close in 5 minutes." A ripple passed through the onlookers. Phones raised higher, shoulders angled for a better view. Someone muttered, "This is ridiculous." Someone else said, "Let her on." Hale lifted a hand, palm outward, not to stop the crowd, but to assert boundary. "This is a safety matter," he said. Louder now, for the cameras. "Please, step back." No one stepped back. The verification screen updated. Emily leaned closer, reading silently. Her breath caught. "Captain," she said. "The ID matches. Seat assignment confirmed." Hale's mouth tightened. He glanced at the clock again. 4 minutes. "And the discretionary review?" he asked. Emily hesitated. The room leaned with her. "That comes after." "After what?" Hale pressed. "After boarding verification," Emily said. Her voice shook. then steadied, which is complete. A few comments on Jason's screen flared and stuck. Then why is she still standing there? Another. Open the door. Hale felt the pressure shift not away from him, but onto the words he'd used. Discretion, safety, resolve. The system had paused itself in public, and now it wanted justification. "I'm invoking a brief hold," he said, turning toward the intercom again. "For safety review." The jet bridge hissed just a whisper this time, and then stopped. The scanner pulsed red again, as if reminded of its role. Danielle watched the sequence with the patience of someone used to audits that resisted conclusions. She didn't speak. She didn't move. She kept her hands visible, her posture open, refusing to give the system anything else to misread. Jason's viewer count ticked upward 30,000. The chat scrolled faster, fragments of outrage and analysis colliding. "This is abuse of discretion. She's calm. Why escalate?" Hale turned back to Danielle. "Ma'am," he said, returning to the formal address, "for everyone's benefit, I need you to step aside while we review." The request sounded reasonable. It wasn't. Danielle felt the weight of it, the subtle exile, the way stepping aside would reframe everything. She shook her head, slow and respectful. "I'll remain here," she said, "so the process stays visible." A beat of silence followed. Not defiance, clarity. Hale's nostrils flared. "You're making this difficult." "I'm making it accurate," Danielle replied. The loudspeaker chimed again. "Final boarding will close in 3 minutes." 3. The number cut sharp. Hale looked around the phones, the still jet bridge, the blinking cursor on the verification screen that had nowhere left to go. He felt the room's expectations settle on him like a verdict waiting for evidence. "Emily," he said, quieter now. "Document the hold." Emily nodded, typing quickly. Her hand shook less than before. Jason's chat slowed for a moment, then surged. A pinned message rose. "If safety is real, why rush?" Hale saw it. He looked back at Danielle. Really looked, this time not as a problem, not as a disruption, but as a person standing exactly where the system had put her. 2 minutes, Emily said. The jet bridge remained frozen. The scanner's red light pulsed, steady as a heartbeat. Hale lifted his radio. His thumb hovered over the button. The decision point was no longer technical. It was moral. And it was public. Danielle met his gaze, unblinking. She didn't speak. The system spoke without inflection. "Final call. Jet bridge will close in 60 seconds. The words arrived clean and absolute, as if nothing that had happened before them mattered. The terminal seemed to shrink around the sound. Conversations cut off mid-syllable. A rolling suitcase stopped rolling. Even the jet bridge's hum fell into a waiting hush. 60 seconds. Emily's hands froze above the keyboard. Captain Hale lowered his radio, the button unpressed. For the first time, there was no sentence ready, no policy to cite that sounded bigger than the clock. Jason's live stream surged. The counter jumped 40,000, then more. Comments scrolled too fast to read, a white noise of insistence. Someone typed in all caps, "Don't close the door." Another pinned message climbed and stuck. "This is what discretion looks like." Hale looked at the clock again. 55 seconds. "Captain," Emily said, voice thin, "the verification is complete." Hale didn't answer. He stared at the scanner, at the red light that had learned patience from the system it served. He knew what would happen if the jet bridge closed. He knew what it would mean procedurally neat, morally corrosive. "Stand by," he said, to no one in particular. Danielle felt the moment narrow, not panic clarity. She had spent years inside rooms where decisions hardened because no one slowed them down. She didn't speak. She let the silence do its work. The system chimed again, softer this time. 30 seconds. 30. Hale lifted his hand, palm out, as if he could stop a machine with a gesture. He turned to Emily. "Document," he said, then stopped. The word felt insufficient now paperwork for an act that would echo. Emily nodded anyway, fingers moving on instinct. The keyboard clacked, loud in the quiet. Jason steadied his phone. The frame held Danielle, the scanner, the jet bridge mouth poised like a held breath. The chat slowed, then settled into a single demand, repeating in different words, "Say her name." Hale felt at the pressure to make this about identity, about proving something, instead of doing the right thing. He resisted. He had resisted for minutes now, clinging to discretion like a rope. "Captain," Danielle said, finally. Her voice was calm, not raised, not pleading. "If the door closes now, the system will have made a choice it can't explain." 20 seconds. Hale met her eyes. He saw resolve there, yes, but also restraint. She wasn't forcing him. She was leaving him room to act. "Who are you?" he asked. The question landed differently than it would have a minute ago. Not accusatory, desperate. Danielle didn't answer right away. She waited until the system chimed again. 10 seconds. 10. Hale turned toward the podium and spoke into the intercom. The words coming. Fast. Now. Hold. The jet bridge. The jet bridge hissed. A sharp intake of breath, then stopped. The gap remained open enough to see the dim curve of the cabin beyond, closed enough to remind everyone how close they'd come. The system fell silent. A wave moved through the onlookers' exhalation, disbelief, relief. The chat exploded. Viewer count spiked again, 80,000, and climbing. Hale lowered the handset. His shoulders dropped a fraction. He looked back at Danielle, the question still there, heavier now because it had waited. "For the record," he said, choosing his words with care, "I need to verify identity." Danielle nodded. This was the moment the system had been circling. She reached into her bag and took out her ID, not thrusting it forward, just holding it where it could be seen. "I understand," she said. Emily leaned in, eyes scanning the card. Her breath caught. She looked up at Hale, then back down, then up again. "Captain," she said quietly, "the name matches the audit firm on the document." The room tilted, not with shock, but with recognition. Pieces aligned. Hale felt the ground shift under his feet. The discretion he'd leaned on now leaned back, demanding accountability. "Proceed," he said, his voice lower than before. Emily typed. The scanner beeped, not green yet, but closer. The red light dimmed, as if conceding ground. Jason's chat pinned a new message. "Let her speak." Danielle met Hale's gaze. She didn't smile. She didn't gloat. She waited. The jet bridge remained open. The system stayed quiet. For the first time since the scanner flashed red, time stopped being a weapon and became a witness. That stillness didn't resolve the moment. It passed it forward. Emily's fingers hovered, then stilled. She looked at the ID again, then at the name on the screen, then back at Danielle, as if the order mattered. Around them, the terminal seemed to lean closer, the way rooms do when something irrevocable is about to be said. "Captain," Emily said, her voice barely above the keyboard's hum. "The firm on the document Aegis Aviation Audit, it matches." Hale didn't respond right away. He stood very still, eyes fixed on the scanner, as though the red light might tell him what to do next. The jet bridge waited, mouth open, no longer threatening, simply present. "For clarity," he said at last, turning to Danielle, "state your role." The question landed cleanly. Not hostile, not kind, procedural. Danielle took a breath. She didn't fill it with credentials. She didn't reach for her phone. She looked at Hale, then at Emily, then briefly at the cluster of phones raised like a second ceiling. "I'm Danielle Moore," she said. Her voice was steady, unadorned. "I run the firm that audits these protocols." The sentence ended, and the room did not immediately resume. There was a pause, 3, maybe 4 seconds, where no one spoke, where the live stream chat stalled into a wall of ellipses and shocked silence. The power in the space didn't spike, it inverted. Hale felt it first. The weight he'd been leaning on, discretion, authority, shifted under him, becoming something that looked back. He swallowed. Once. The movement was small, but the cameras caught it. Emily's eyes widened, then softened with recognition. "Captain," she said, the checklist header. "I know," Hale cut in, then stopped himself. He closed his eyes for a beat. When he opened them, the room saw the recalibration happen in real time. Jason's viewer count leapt past 80,000. Comments flooded in. Fast. And reverent now. That explains it. She knew the steps. Opened the door. Hale turned to the intercom, then hesitated. He looked at the clock, no longer blinking warnings, just time. He looked back at Danielle. "Proceed with boarding," he said. Emily's hand moved. The scanner beeped green this time, clear and unmistakable. The sound cut through the terminal like a bell. A ripple passed through the crowd, gasps, applause that started and stopped as people remembered where they were. The jet bridge hissed and opened wider, the mechanical sigh of a system changing its mind. Danielle didn't move right away. She watched the green light settle, as if to be sure it would stay. "Thank you," Emily said, breathless. She meant more than the words. Hale cleared his throat. "Miss Moore," he said, formal again, but altered. "For the record, the concern was safety," Danielle said, gently. "I know." Danielle said. She stepped forward then, boarding pass accepted, the gate opening to her like it should have all along. She paused at the threshold, half in the terminal, half in the jet bridge, occupying both spaces for one last moment. Hale met her gaze. The uniform no longer did the talking. "We'll need to document," he said. "Yes," Danielle replied. "You should." The jet bridge lights reflected off the glass behind them, doubling their silhouettes. Phones dipped, then rose again, capturing the image, the door open, the decision visible. Danielle turned and walked into the jet bridge. The metal walls closed around her, softer than before. The hum, now a welcome. Behind her, the system resumed its ordinary rhythm boarding announcements, footsteps, the low murmur of a crowd processing what it had just seen. Hale stood at the gate a moment longer, watching the green light hold. He exhaled, slow. Inside the jet bridge, the sound changed. The terminal's murmur thinned into a softer, contained hum. The metal walls absorbed voices, turning them into echoes that arrived late and gentle. Danielle took a few steps forward, then stopped. The boarding line behind her stalled, respectful, uncertain. "Miss Moore," Captain Hale's voice carried differently here, lower, stripped of the intercom's authority. He had followed her just far enough to be out of frame for most phones. The live stream continued somewhere behind them, but the heat had receded. What remained was gravity. Danielle turned. Hale held his cap under his arm now, the gesture unconscious. "May I?" he asked, indicating the sidewall where the jet bridge widened slightly. She nodded. They stepped aside, leaving a narrow aisle open for boarding to resume. The green light on the scanner behind them held steady, a small mercy. "I didn't intend," Hale began, then stopped. He exhaled and tried again. That wasn't how it should have gone. Danielle didn't fill the silence. She waited, the way she did in debriefs, when the truth needed space. Hale's eyes dropped to the floor, then lifted. "My mother," he said, the word sounding unfamiliar in his mouth. "Years ago. Different airport, different reason, same look." He paused, swallowing. They told her it was policy. She stood there with her bag like it weighed too much. I remember thinking, if I'd been older, if I'd had the uniform, then it wouldn't have happened. The jet bridge hummed. A cart rattled past behind them, carrying a family toward the cabin. Boarding continued, ordinary and fragile. Danielle felt the shared wound register, not as absolution, not as permission, but as context. "I'm sorry," she said. It wasn't a forgiveness. It was recognition. Hale nodded once, grateful and diminished at the same time. When the clock started yelling, he said quietly, "I chose speed over sequence." Danielle met his eyes. "That's how systems teach us," she said. "They make urgency feel like safety." Behind them, footsteps paused. Emily approached, holding a tablet close to her chest. Her voice was careful. "Captain, operations is on the line." Hale took the tablet. The voice on the other end was calm, clipped. "We're placing a 12-minute hold on departure," it said. "Regional has flagged the stream. We're initiating an expedited audit on discretionary denials. Effective immediately, all denies require ground supervisor cross-verification." Hale closed his eyes for a beat. "Understood," he said. Emily's shoulders dropped a fraction. "They want documentation now," she added. "And a notice to the crew." "Do it," Hale said. The system moved not theatrically, not vengefully. It adjusted. Danielle watched the exchange, the way policy shifted when light stayed on it long enough. "That's good," she said. "It'll help." Hale nodded. "It should have been there already." The boarding line thinned. The jet bridge felt larger, quieter. Phones lowered as the story's center of gravity moved inward. Hale hesitated, then spoke again. "I owe you an apology," he said. The word landed without ceremony. "Not because of who you are, because of what I did." Danielle considered him. The apology mattered, but not as a performance. "Document it," she said, "and mean it tomorrow." A faint smile touched his mouth, then disappeared. "I will." She reached into her pocket and took out the boarding pass. The red stamp from earlier had bled slightly at the edge. She smoothed it once with her thumb, then folded it in half, not sharply, just enough to mark the moment. She slipped it back into her pocket. Behind them, the jet bridge lights dimmed to boarding mode. A flight attendant passed, offering a nod that carried both welcome and witness. Hale stepped back, restoring the distance. "Safe travels," he said. Danielle inclined her head. "Fly safe," she replied. As she moved forward again, the system resumed its rhythm announcements. Footsteps, the low, living noise of transit. The live stream's urgency drained into commentary and replay. Hale remained where he was for a moment longer, cap still under his arm, watching the green light hold. The system had recorded everything. But for the first time that night, it had also learned something. The cabin smelled like recycled air and fabric warmed by bodies settling into routine. Danielle slid into her seat and felt the small, ordinary resistance of an armrest under her elbow. Around her, people stowed bags, buckled belts, murmured to strangers who would remain strangers. The plane resumed its life as if it hadn't paused at all. She set her bag beneath the seat and sat back. The overhead light clicked on, then off. A flight attendant moved down the aisle, voice practiced and calm. "Safety card, seatbelt, exits." The words were familiar, almost comforting in their repetition. Danielle took the boarding pass from her pocket. The paper was creased now, folded once and unfolded again. The red stamp had bled slightly where her thumb had pressed it earlier. She smoothed it with the pad of her finger, not to erase the mark, only to feel the texture, to remind herself it was real. Outside the small oval window, the jet bridge detached, The door sealed with a muted thud. The sound was final, but not cruel, just complete. A man across the aisle caught her eye and offered a small nod, the kind shared by people who had witnessed something together without needing to name it. She nodded back. The moment passed. The captain's voice came over the intercom, steadier now. "Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. We'll be pushing back shortly." No explanation. No apology broadcast. It wasn't needed. The system had already moved. Danielle closed her eyes for a moment and let the quiet inside the cabin settle. Her pulse slowed. The pressure that had sharpened everything at the gate softened into memory. She felt the afterimage of it, the way muscles remembered effort even after release. When she opened her eyes, the flight attendant stood beside her row. "Can I get you anything?" she asked, a smile that carried no agenda. "Water would be great," Danielle said. "Water would be great." The attendant handed her a cup. Danielle took a sip, cool and grounding. Then another. She tucked the boarding pass into the seat pocket, visible but no longer central, no longer evidence, just an object returning to its place. As the plane began to move, she felt the gentle pushback, the slow pivot that turned the window view from terminal glass to open tarmac. Vehicles crossed and recrossed in careful choreography. Somewhere beyond the wing, the gate would already be reassigning itself, the day continuing. Danielle thought of the safety placard at the gate, the bubbled laminate, the outdated date. She thought of the checklist header, the sequence that mattered. She thought of the moment the green light had finally held. Justice, she knew, rarely looked like punishment. More often, it looked like alignment things, returning to the order they had pretended to follow all along. The engine spooled up, a low vibration that traveled through the seat into her bones. The cabin lights dimmed, conversation softened. A child laughed somewhere behind her, unburdened by what had come before. Danielle reached up and closed the air vent, then reopened it a fraction. The cool stream found its mark. She rested her head back and let the hum steady her thoughts. As the plane turned toward the runway, a memory surfaced, not of the gate, but of a different moment years ago, standing outside a conference room after a long audit, wondering whether naming a flaw would make her difficult or make the system safer. She had named it anyway. The room had gone quiet. Then it had changed. The aircraft paused, engines holding. A final stillness before motion. The captain's voice returned, quieter now, closer. "Cabin crew, prepare for departure." Danielle exhaled. She felt the small, private vulnerability that followed confrontation. The hollow that came after doing the right thing when it cost something. She didn't fill it with pride. She let it be what it was. The plane accelerated. The pressure pushed her gently into the seat. The ground fell away. As the city slid beneath them, Danielle reached into the seat pocket and touched the edge of the boarding pass once more, then let her hand fall. She didn't need it anymore. In the quiet between announcements, she spoke softly, not to anyone else, not for the record. "You were right to be concerned about safety." The words landed and stayed, not as accusation, not as triumph, just as truth, finally at rest. Above the clouds, the light evened out. The system, for now, was in balance. Now, I want to hear from you. How did this story make you feel? And at what moment did it truly stay with you? Have you ever faced a situation where doing the right thing meant standing your ground alone? Share your thoughts in the comments, and if this story resonated, please like, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories about justice, humanity, and the moments that define us.